Well, welcome everyone. I'm Vicki Hoke. I'm the CEO for the Home Care Association of America, and I want to thank you for joining us today. This is a really special treat for me because we get to really highlight the Home Care Association of America, and most importantly, highlight the reasons why you as home care providers would receive a return on your investment should you decide, and we're hoping you do, to become a member of the Home Care Association of America. So for the next hour or so, we're going to talk about the benefits. And I'm so thrilled that, as you can see from our agenda on your slide, you see that Jeff Weiberg, who is a member of our board of directors, who is the CEO of the Family Resource Home Care located out in the state of Washington, but also providing services in Oregon and Idaho, is going to be joining us to talk about membership benefits from his perspective as far as being a home care provider. And then we have two other great speakers to talk about some insightful information that will help you as home care providers. This is just to give you a taste of the kinds of educational programming and insight that our association provides to its members. But before I give you a little snapshot of the Home Care Association of America, I just want to spend a moment about why it is important today, especially today in 2022, for you to consider membership with us. You can see from that slide that we now have grown to over 4,000 home care agencies in the country. You can see the numbers in each state. 80% of our membership is indeed franchisees. However, that independent agency growth of 15% is really our target to increase our members. You know, I'm always asked about the home care industry and just how many agencies are there that are providing the types of care that we as the Home Care Association of America represent. In other words, we are the only national home care trade association that exclusively represents those home care agencies providing personal care. And right now we estimate there's anywhere between 26 and 28,000 home care agencies in the country. And now more than ever, we are really reaching out to all the home care agencies in the country to encourage them to become members of our association. And you might ask, well, why? Why now? Well, let's remember what we've just been through and what's happening. You know, now more than ever, home care is being talked about in state capitals as well as the US Capitol as far as being a very viable option when it comes to caring for our growing population in this country. I don't think I ever thought in all my years as being an advocate for home care that a sitting president would be talking about home care, but that's happening today. Senate leadership, House of Representative members are all talking about home care because, as you all know, as our population ages, where do people want to be in their growing elderly years? They want to stay at home. And we can have them stay at home and enable them to stay at home if we can get them home care services. So it's a win-win. This is the most desirable choice when it comes to receiving long-term care. And it's also a win for government because, as you all know, home care is much cheaper for Medicaid to pay for rather than to pay for the more costly nursing home setting. So today it's about what can we offer you as home care agencies, as members? What is your ROI on membership? So now I want to talk about the internal operations of the Home Care Association. As you can see, last year alone, we grew our membership by 500 new independent home care agencies. And we're very proud of that because we want to make sure we're balanced in all that we do for our members. You can see the corporate members that are listed there that are members. And then over on the left-hand side under state active chapters, we have those chapters where there is a star that signifies that the Home Care Association of America is also investing in a lobbyist for those agencies in those respective states. So you also get a twofer when you join the Home Care Association of America. You not only get a team of lobbyists in Washington, D.C., to make sure that the good bills are passed that would benefit your businesses, and as well as having that lobbyist at the state level to watch your state legislature to make sure the very best bills are passed, not only to help your business as a home care agency, but also to make sure we're advocating for the people that we care for, whether that be the elderly 75-year-old or the young man who has a physical disability. Also on that slide, we show you the various committees that we have. One of the things that we advocate for quite a bit these days is our Veterans Administration. You know, many home care agencies are delivering in-home care to our veterans. So we really have a wonderful group that meets routinely with the VA administration to talk about the VA services for veterans. And of course, another main reason many trade associations exist is for advocacy. And so we really watch what's going on in your state, what's going on at the federal level when it comes to policies and regulations. And so you're going to hear a lot about that from Jeff. So I'm not going to go into any further detail on that, because I think hearing it from another provider to his peers is much better than me talking about what the association does. So it's now my pleasure to turn it over to Jeff Weiberg, who is a board member, who is absolutely nationally recognized for his efforts on behalf of the entire industry, to talk about what the association can do on your behalf. Jeff?
Yeah, thank you very much, Vicki. And it's a pleasure to be with everyone today, or if you're having an opportunity to be able to review this video afterwards, I welcome you most heartily. I'm excited to be able to share with you a taste of what it's like to be able to be a member of our association. And, you know, I would say that I'm an unabashed advocate for the industry's association because of the fact that I've seen so much of the good that it does. And today, of course, is an unabashed invitation for you to be able to join with us. But I also understood that I'm unabashed because I'm already a convert. And so I wanted to share a little bit about my conversion story and see how that might impact you and what you envision for your agency as you continue to grow and scale. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what it is that I've been able to get from the association over my home care career and how it has impacted me overall. And to do that, I wanted to start with, I did a little bit of research, and I found some articles that were written by individuals who kind of studied the business case behind having an association. And I found a list that I thought was very compelling, that is the top 10 reasons to join any trade association. So this is not HCAOA. This is across the business continuity of any type of industry and why you would want to join with a trade association. So the first one, which is near and dear to my personal heart, is the education and training, benefit programs that you could become involved with, access to the membership directories. There's competitive advantages that can come, maybe access to certification or licensing programs, privileged access to industry events and conferences, potential cost savings, inside access to innovations, new development, opportunities to give back to the community, which is a lot associated with the advocacy work that we do here at HCAOA, and then networking opportunities. So these are the top 10 reasons that business gurus say this is why you would want to consider, as a business owner, a business leader, of why you'd want to join a trade association. And then I decided I wanted to put that to the test and talk through my journey and find the ways that I have benefited from these top 10 reasons over the course of my home care career. So let me tell you a little bit about my own history. When I bought my agency back in, and I can go beep for Jennifer to advance the slides. When I bought my agency several years ago, I had this vision of really wanting to scale my company. I wanted to create a new type of agency that, you know, is kind of that purple unicorn. And I started out very, very small, like many of you probably did, as a home care owner. And I wanted to scale it up. And so today I'm pushing 60 million in size. So a pretty decent sized home care agency, I would say. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way of scaling up. And so in my early days, I came from a career as an HR guy. So I had spent a decade as an HR leader in various different publicly traded companies, and then came to rest at Family Home Care, which was at the time a skilled nursing or skilled home health, hospice, and a home care agency, and had the opportunity to be able to purchase the home care division. And one of the things I decided to do was to try to network around to find who was the individual that I admired the most in the industry. There was a gentleman who lived on the other side of my state who ran an agency that was 10 million in size. And I just couldn't imagine. I couldn't imagine at that time being 10 million in size. And I thought, man, that is what I want to get to. And I went and met with him to just interview him and ask him questions about what it is that got him where he was going to go. And asked him, what was his secret sauce? What was the thing that caused him to be able to scale from 0 all the way up to 10 million and beyond? And he says, what I'm going to have you do? I want you to get involved in our state chapter. So he invited me to come to a chapter meeting, and I went. And became convinced at that chapter meeting that, hey, this is a group of people and this is a organization that I want to get involved with. So I joined up on the state chapter committee at that time, and at his invitation. And it was in part because he was saying, this is what I think that you should do. But it certainly became very eye-opening from my very first time attending a conference here in Washington State, to where I am today in being such a huge fan that I am. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way of how to scale an organization. And most of those have come through the education and networking that I've done here as an association member. So up on the screen, I'm showing you SEP's concept of scaling a company, and you maybe have read about this. There's a couple of different books around that talk through this concept of going from startup to being able to scale up, and that there's early stage barriers that I want to kind of talk to is from my vantage of how that exists in home care. And then there's this concept of crossing the chasm that I'll talk through to get to a place of scale. So go ahead and beep to the next slide. I feel like I'm back in grade school here. So some early stage barriers. First early stage barrier that comes to my mind in home care is we're a very low margin business. And so there's not a lot of capital that we can put to play and invest heavily into our organizations, usually from the beginning. And so as a result, oftentimes what we'll do in our marketplaces is we'll try to create a niche. We'll try to specialize. We'll try to say to that market that, hey, I'm the VA provider, or I'm the LTC provider, or I'm really good at dementia care, or I'm really good at doing short shifts, or I'm really good at doing the long shifts, or whatever the case may be. We tend to try to find something that we're really good at, and that creates what's called a customer expectation. And as we think about going to scale, we have to recognize that to sell to a wider breadth of customer, to try to appeal to a wider value proposition, we actually have to cross this chasm of going from what's comfortable for us and what we are really good at, and maybe become a little bit more ubiquitous. And that can be tough. That's what the books will call the chasm. And to cross that chasm, you have to make some investments of your limited capital. So where to make those investments, where to spend your limited capital is a huge conundrum that a lot of businesses or business leaders have to deal with early in their career. The second one that I want to talk about, and I'll get to some solutions here. The second one I want to talk about is that oftentimes, especially as we begin out with home care, we're the ones who are doing everything. We're doing the scheduling, we're doing the assessments, we're out there doing the marketing. We have to do everything. We're the chief cook and bottle washer, everything in between. And so the point is that your limitation on scale comes from the fact that you can't grow beyond the capacity of a single individual. And sometimes this is even a member of your team that you can't seem to grow beyond their own capacity to be able to manage because they're the only ones doing the work. And this is certainly true of also if you have a small group of 2 or 3 individuals. Your ultimate scale can't be beyond the scale of the individuals that you have, the talent that you can be able to bring to the table. And so there's a leap of faith that is required in order to be able to make an investment before you can afford it, to bring an additional infrastructure to be able to bring your organization to scale and to accomplish what you need to be able to accomplish. And then third, I would say that there's a difficulty in differentiating, especially early on as a home care owner. There's a difficulty in differentiating the employment brand. Maybe there's not enough scale to be able to offer benefits, or that which you're offering is not differentiated from those of your competitors. Maybe you're competing up against much larger agencies who have the ability to have a value proposition or a reach using their recruiting mechanisms out to a larger base of caregivers. And that we know has become the name of the game over the course of the last couple of years, where he who has the caregivers is going to win the race. And so trying to differentiate yourself can be a huge challenge for especially a smaller agency. So those are what I would call the early stage barriers. And I want to talk through a little bit about how I got there. Beep. There we go. So knowing where to invest, let's talk about that first. Remember that time is also an investment commodity. So this is not just referring to the money that you have. You also have a limitation on your time, and knowing where to spend your time to be able to get a return on the investment of either your time or your money, it can be challenging. There's a lot of different things clamoring for your attention. There's a lot of different voices that are wanting to take your money, and ways, people that are promising any snake oil that's going to solve all of your ills. And even today, you could even call me one of those peddlers, somebody who's saying, hey, you should spend a little bit of your time and as well as a little bit of your money to invest into an association. So it really comes down to getting a return on investment for everything that you invest into, whether it's time or money. And from my personal perspective, one of the fastest ways to be able to understand where to invest your time is to focus in on the key performance indicators of a well-organized home care agency that is benchmarked. And so this is looking at individuals, individual companies, or the industry in its entirety to highlight what are the highly functional, the ones that you aspire to be like. What are those highly functional home care agencies operating like? What is their key performance indicators? And if I juxtapose the way that I'm functioning against those highly functional home care agencies, it highlights what needs to be improved within my company. So case in point, let's say that your conversion rate of a referral is in the low 20s, and benchmark for the master's category is at 42%. So you're saying, okay, there's a 20% spread here. Maybe instead of making the investment into trying to do more referral generation, I need to do more investment into referral conversion and understanding what are the best practices around that. Now, my personal opinion, the best ROI that you're ever going to get is the ROI of learning from other people's spent money, the mistakes that Jeff Weiberg has made, and that he's willing to share with you, or the successes that Jeff Weiberg has had, and the way that I've been able to accomplish those successes is you learning from money that I've already invested, the time that I've already invested. And how do you get that learning? You get it through access to other members who are already doing what it is that you want to be able to do or be. So if you aspire, for example, to be a $60 million home care agency, then great. You should be listening with me. You should be networking with me. That would be fantastic. If your goal is to get to the next level of, say, 3 million, or another threshold that people have a hard time getting beyond is 10 million, then you should be networking with those folks. How do you find those folks? Being part of the association will give you access to those folks. So that's going back to number 3. And then I would point out that nearly 100% of the tactics that I have employed over the course of my time in home care to be able to get me from where I was to where I am, and the tactics that I'm continuing to employ to be able to get to where I want to go, to my next threshold, is all learned from others. And where I have learned the most is the HCAOA webinars and conferences, and then the ability to network with other members of the HCAOA. So again, that in my mind is a massive return on my investment of a little bit of time with them to learn what has worked or not worked. That way I'm actually getting an ROI on the invested time and money that they have already done. It's the old saying is, don't reinvent the wheel. I'm a big fan of that concept. If there's truly a better mousetrap out there, if there's good mechanisms to solve some of the problems that you're facing as an agency, you can identify what those problems are by benchmarking against the rest of the industry or against those who you admire, and then identifying with those folks through education as to what are the tactics that they specifically used in order to be able to get where they want to go. This will also help you to identify a solution to that second barrier that I talked about, which is which staff to add and when. If you start with the KPI that's benchmarked and you identify that, hey, like my example from earlier, that my conversion rate is not high enough, you look at the people who are engaged in doing your client conversions, your lead conversions, and you ask the question of, do I have the right person or do they have the right training? By engaging again with your own training and experience from others, you can quickly identify, hey, I don't have someone whose job it is to do that. Maybe that's where I need to make my first investment. And this will help steer your time and energy away from reinventing the wheel and maybe making costly mistakes. Mistakes that might be like the example that I used of, oh my gosh, I'm not generating enough referrals. I need to invest into a full-time salesperson, or I need to invest into a bunch of SEO. And that can be thousands and thousands of dollars per month, where maybe a one-time training associated with proper lead handling and conversion could be something that could cost you just a few hours of time, and then a few hours of additional time implementing that within your organization to get the same exact result. So again, this is going back to some identification of best practice as being some of the ways that I have learned to scale my organization. Beep. Going to the next one. Is understanding that the name of the game for us all right now is all about recruiting caregivers. And differentiating the employment offering is oftentimes a luxury of those who are larger, who have the ability to offer more to the employee or have the bigger pulpit from which to preach to those caregivers that they've got more to offer. And the reason why they've been able to do that is because they have scale. So one way to be able to kind of mitigate that or level the playing field is to avail yourself of the association offered benefits. So the association has been able to broker lower cost benefits for employees that we can offer to our caregivers. And that's way to be able to, if you're a smaller agency, compete with the larger agencies by availing yourself of an association. And that was the number 2 on the list of the top 10 reasons. You can certainly do benchmarking against wages, hours, working conditions, and benefits to be able to see where you are differentiated against the rest of the marketplace when it comes to asking somebody to come into your organization. And then I would also say that a smaller agency tends to lean heavily in on the idea of being a kind of a niche culture. That if I'm a smaller agency, you, the caregiver, are communicating directly with me as the owner, I can solve your problems, I can make decisions, I can be very flexible, I can be very innovative, and I can do so on the fly. Larger agencies tend to follow systems and policies and procedures that are sometimes bureaucratic in nature. And so your relationship directly with me is going to be valuable to me, and it's going to be valuable to you as a caregiver. So now I have a great culture set between me and my caregivers. The problem is that doesn't scale. And so if your goal is to ultimately scale, you have to figure out how to be able to do best practice culture work without necessarily being the personal individual who is offering that culture to every single employee. Maybe also tactically, you're learning how to do better targeted recruitment so that you're being able to articulate the value proposition of home care to different audiences. Like, for example, the meaningfulness of the work to a millennial, or the stability of the work to a Gen X, the ability to set your own schedule to a Gen X. These are value props that I've learned how to articulate this because I've attended some of our webinars and our on-site education programs that are teaching me better how to articulate and attract caregivers that are different, because I guarantee there's people on this call that use the same ad day in and day out to recruit all of their caregivers, when what they should be doing is doing very targeted value proposition messages and then rotating those on a regular basis. You wouldn't necessarily learn how to do that unless you pay attention to some of the vendors or to some of the educators that we have. And I put up here a shameless plug. We are going to be focusing heavily on some of those very specific tactics on recruiting at our upcoming annual conference, which is in Orlando. And by the way, you would have discounted membership to that conference if you are a member. So you can save hundreds of dollars right there coming to that education. It's well worth your time, well worth the ROI. I'm a big fan because I've got most of my tactics from attending those. And so now I've even joined the committee that helps curate all of the education associated with those conferences. So I have a firsthand knowledge that you're going to be getting a lot of really great tactical takeaways from our conference in Orlando. So I hope to be able to see you there. Beep. Last, I'll talk about systems. To be able to create a scalable organization, ultimately, a lot of the way that you do things needs to be systematized. It's a way to be able to do something consistently with a predictable outcome, with a good quality. All of that comes down to having a system. And I got to say that nearly 100% of my IT systems are from vendors that I have personally met at our conferences. Nearly 100% of my people systems are coming from ideas that I have learned from the HCAOA education programs. So that in and of itself, it has been an immense ROI for me personally, because I have been able to connect with so many of the experts that are tailoring a lot of their offerings to our space that I otherwise wouldn't be able to connect with if I weren't attending and participating and networking amongst these vendors. I can tell you that at our vendor expo, we're going to have over 50 vendors that are dedicated strictly to home care, offering up their various different services that they have for our industry to help us to be more successful as an association. And that's fantastic. Access to innovation. This is number 8. We'll be doing a lot of education about this at the conference, but there are a lot of trends that even Vicki spoke to about things that we've been able to accomplish in Capitol Hill, and changes that are coming down the pipe associated with payer mix, or recognition of the value of home care and how we can articulate our value proposition to our referral sources, or even to the families that consume our services. All of that is enveloped in this innovation concept. And it's very expensive to innovate by yourself. It is very inexpensive to innovate when you are 4,100 agencies. So joining together with an association really helps to drive the future of home care. We are the authors of what the industry is going to look like. Whether you like it or not, we are the predominant voice of home care. We are the predominant force within home care. So if you're not joining with us, you're not paying attention to the opportunities that are coming down the pipe for on behalf of those who are anxiously engaged. You have access to data, and even knowing what kind of data to be able to capture to begin with, to be able to articulate your value proposition. And I know we're going to be hearing from Rebecca here in just a little bit with Trella Health. They have a wealth of data that is so incredibly valuable for us as home care agencies. I'm a customer of Trella Health, and I wouldn't have become even aware of Trella Health were it not the relationship that we have through HCAOA. Access to the messaging, the value proposition messaging to caregivers or clients or whomever it might be. The access to the vendors, that's number 7 on the top 10 list. And we have a couple of those examples today of ways that we're bringing forth expertise to help solve problems or to take advantage of opportunities for our industry, and you don't get it if you're not involved, if you're not listening to the voices, if you're not participating in the overall value prop of the HCAOA. So for me, from my ability to scale as an agency to where I am today, to where I am going to be in the future, has been informed and instructed and edified by my membership in HCAOA. And I'm not saying that tongue in cheek. I'm saying nearly 100% of my tactics have come from my membership. So it's been a huge boon to me. Beep. I want you to think in terms of ROI. This is a statistical analysis right here of the average home care agency who is a member versus not a member. This is an $800,000 difference, or a 58% increase for those who are a member. The difference is incredibly stark, and it's only becoming more stark. And the reason why it's becoming more stark is because this industry is becoming more difficult. There's more regulations, there's more best practices out there. We are becoming more sophisticated. It used to be that anybody can hang out a shingle and be successful. Those days have completely ended. So the return that you will get on your investment should always depend upon not just simply joining, but becoming engaged, attending the education, participating in committees, being involved and listening to the weekly information that's coming out from the HCAOA will inform your ROI. At the end of the day, we're talking about $800, approximately $800 to be able to join the HCAOA. The return on that investment could come 800,000 times for the average agency. That's incredible ROI. You just don't get that in any other types of ways. So in my opinion, the best ROI that we're going to get as members is still in the future. The future ROI is very bright because we, again, are the voice. We are the shapers of the industry. And if you're paying attention to what's happening, the innovation that's taking place, the trends that are taking place, the necessary adjustments to our operational tactics that we need to put into place to take advantage of the opportunities that are coming down the pipe, that is all happening in the conversation here at the HCAOA. The best days of home care, in my opinion, are still ahead, but it will not be for all. This is a wave that is definitely cresting. The question is whether or not you're riding that wave or whether you're going to be crushed by it. And if you're writing it, it's because you're well informed and taking advantage of all the opportunities that are being manifest by the industry. That's going to happen if you're a member. Now, it's my pleasure to be able to introduce you to Chris Bowker. He is the co-founder of Pre-Intent. He comes from a home care background, a long-time home care background. A couple of years ago, founded this particular company to be able to meet the needs that he identified very clearly, that you'll definitely sympathize with, that meet some challenges that we have in the home care industry and offer some unique solutions. So here's a great example of number 7, number 8, number 1, number 3, all in one. I'll turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you so much. And thank you everyone for joining us today. Pre-Intent, we're highly focused on recruiting. We know that is not only going to be your success factor, but it's also going to be your limiting factor if it's not your success factor. And so recruiting is so important. And as a company today, we work with well over 700 home care agencies across the US, helping them recruit. And our software helps their recruiting staff if they have one scale. If they don't have one, we're basically the virtual assistant for that very streamlined staff in the back office. So today we're going to talk about what is your candidate experience, because at the end, when you really focus on your candidate experience, your hiring process and everything else takes care of itself. We look at recruiting a lot like sales. And so when we look at that candidate experience, we ask questions like, how does that candidate feel about your company as they go through your hiring process? How do you make them feel about themselves? Are you making them feel like a number? Do they feel important? Do you make them smile? And then last of all, just how important it is to move as many people through your funnel as you can, because unfortunately, a lot of recruiting is a numbers game. We understand what recruiters are up against. So we can go to the next slide. So when you're looking at recruiting today, we know that the average recruiter comes in, they start smiling and dialing through their Indeed leads or their online leads. Most of those calls are going to voicemail, and they're trying just to get a hold of people. Like the next step in the process is to have a conversation, or at least to start one. So when we look at your hiring process or your candidate experience, it needs to be filled with speed, convenience, and ease at every step of the process. How can you make it faster, more convenient, and easier for that candidate who is ready to get hired and qualified to raise their hand and schedule an interview, right? And so when we look at convenience, it's not only convenience to communicate, but also to qualify and schedule. And then ease is really about, you know, the forms of filling out, the tasks you're asking them to accomplish, the hurdles you're asking them to jump. And what does that mean for the candidate? As we go through this presentation, I want you to think about these numbers. The average candidate's going to generate, you know, $5,600 to $6,500 a month for you in revenue, depending on how much you charge, right? Maybe more in some states. And then, so if you hired 8.3 people a month, that's 100 people a year. If you're familiar with the millions, you understand that 83 is times 12 is a million. And so if you hire everybody one day faster because your hiring process is very simple, fast, and convenient, you're going to make an extra 30K a year because now you have 100 more working days that you didn't have before, right? And so it's like, how do you measure that ROI of speed? It's not just winning the candidate, but it's actually winning the candidate and making more money. So next slide. So how do you do that, right? Like, oh, that's great that you told us, you know, what the problem is and what the solution is, but how do we actually go through that? Well, before you do anything, you need to look in the mirror. That's where all process change starts, is to be honest and truthful with yourself about how you're doing. So go and secret shop, get colleagues, family members, friends to secret shop your recruitment process. Understand where the hiccups are, how challenging it is, and have them do it 100% from their phone. Don't have them do it from a laptop sitting at their desk. Have them do it from their phone, on the move, on the fly, because that's how your caregivers are interacting with you. From there, though, there's really 4 kind of actionable steps I wanted to share today that I think anybody can implement. First is implementing text message for outreach. It's the most important, most powerful form of communication, without a doubt. Second is just-in-time information. You know, and this is really talking about hoops and barriers that you put in front of people. And that's all that's doing is preventing you from hiring them. It's not preventing them from, you know, getting a job. Speed to interview, the need to be the next interview and why that's important. And then, of course, setting up your recruiter for success. Recruiter burnout has been very real over the past 2 years of the pandemic. We have seen that happen, and giving them the right tools, the right coaching, can prevent a lot of burnout in those individuals in your office that are critical to your success. That's your sales team. You're purchasing labor hours to resell and make money off of. So that sales team is incredibly important, your recruiting team. So let's go next slide. Let's jump into this. So text messaging. Text messaging is the easiest way to start a conversation. It's also the most convenient. Text messaging allows people to respond when it's convenient for them. So they could be standing in line. If you call them, they're not going to answer. You text them, they get their Starbucks, they respond when it's convenient for them. They're dropping their kids off at daycare, they're with a client. There's so many instances of this where they can respond when it's easy for them to respond and they're not having to interrupt their day with a phone call. And when we think about a conversation, realize that a conversation is just the sharing of information. And that can start out digitally, but then it's very easy to convert into a verbal conversation or an interview. All right, next slide. I had too much coffee, so I apologize if I'm talking very fast here. So when you're using text messaging, I just want to reiterate the importance of this, because you Google it online and everybody who's trying to sell text messaging tells you how important it is. So we actually found like a government website with like a legitimate school, and they gave us these statistics. And I want to spend a second to unpack these, especially this first one. Texting is 10 times faster than a phone call, okay? 10 times, right? So if you have your recruiter smiling and dialing everybody and not sending a text message first, you're putting them behind the 8 ball. And the reason why it's 10 times faster is because 75% of calls are not answered. Of that, only a portion of those voicemails are either set up or not full. And of that, only so many people are actually going to listen to a voicemail in a timely fashion that it's going to be actionable for them. And so when you're leaving voicemails, yes, it's great for that 10, 20, maybe 30% if you're lucky that you actually get a hold of or call you back. But it's not great for the other 70%. Whereas a text message, your message is going to be read, 99% open rates, right? At least everybody reads the alert. And then most people are reacting within the next 5 minutes, right? 3 to 5 minutes, they're back in and they're responding to you. And so texting generates that conversation and creates the convenience for the conversation to continue when they're ready. Let's go to the next slide. So it's not just sending any old text though. What's important is to have the very first message, that very first impression, that pickup line actually work, right? And so when you're constructing that first message, here at Pre-Intent, our first message is very similar across all of our customers, just because we know it works. We're going to use a logo because a logo is easier to consume than words. They're going to know exactly the company now, who's contacting them. We're going to use the candidate's name in the message, the recruiter's name. So you start to really eliminate stranger danger at this point, right? There's not just some random person. There's no names in it. You're also going to tell them the purpose and the benefits for engaging with your company, and then have a very clear call to action, right? And in our system, that's to take a qualification survey, basically. But it could be call me back, or when can I call you? You know, there's a lot of call to actions that are very clear, but the whole goal is to start the exchange of information. You're starting that by sharing who you are and why you're contacting them. So as you can see over here on the right, hi Dana, this is Chris. Candidate name, recruiter. I just left you a voicemail about the caregiver position at XYZ Home Care Company. Love to meet with you. If you complete this quick party application, just 30 seconds, I can schedule an interview right away, right? We're giving them clear benefit statements, clear call to actions, and simple. All right, let's go ahead to the next slide. So when you want to use text messaging to start that conversation, but more importantly, you want to keep that flow of information simple and easy and convenient. And this is where just-in-time information really comes into play. We see a lot of home care agencies, we'll get on the phone with them and we'll start talking to them like, no, we need a full application before we're willing to interview. And my immediate question is like, have you ever held open interviews or gone to a job fair? They're like, of course. We're like, well, do those people fill out a full application before you interview them? I'm like, well, no. I was like, so you don't need it. You like to have it. And that's the difference. So if you have a very long application that's asking for references and work histories and a resume, all you're doing is creating redundancy in that candidate's life and creating a negative candidate experience. At this point, they're frustrated because they've entered their name 3 times. They've submitted a resume with all their work history, and you're asking them to type it out, and you're asking for references, and they don't even know if they like you yet. Whereas if you're just asking the simple minimum viable data points to conduct an interview, do you have a driver's license? Do you have auto insurance? Do you have reliable transportation? What type of work history do you have? Are you brand new to home care? Have you been a family caregiver? Do you have experience? Now, if you're in New Jersey, California, some of the more regulated states, it becomes a little bit more difficult, right? You have to have the CHHA, or you have to be certified with the state, FBI background checks, CIA background checks in California, I think is what they're moving to. That's just a joke. No one go crazy. But it's about creating it, making it easy for that person to continue to move forward and convenient for them. On our forms, they all come pre-filled and they're just checking boxes that say yes or no. And we're getting really honest answers. You'd be surprised. We have about 60% of all Indeed leads will end up taking our priority application, and 20% of them disqualify. So it's not like they're just making things up. They're actually answering honestly, which is amazing. But keeping that just-in-time information all the way through. Realize that when they come into the office for the interview, if you're going to make a job offer, you can hand them a tablet or a computer, and they can fill out their employee profile at that point, or what I like to call the full application or employee profile. You can gather the information as you need it just in time to make the next step happen. All right, next step, next slide, please. So speed to interview, this also goes into speed to job offer. Those two things are synonymous, but you can't have speed to job offer without speed to interview. So that's what we really focus on. If you have the ability to integrate self-scheduling apps, like Calendly is like the biggest, they are fantastic. We do all of our clients do 100% self-scheduling of interviews. It puts the power in the recruiter and the candidate's hands. But one of the really interesting things we saw in the first quarter of 2022 was the likelihood that you get ghosted on an interview almost doubles after a 48-hour delta between the time they booked and the time the interview was scheduled. So if today's Tuesday, if they book for Friday, there's a 50% better chance you're going to get ghosted. And it's not always that they're a flaky candidate. We see a lot of messaging back and forth between company and candidate that they accepted another job offer. Remember, those candidates applied to 8 jobs on a job board. If they wanted, they could have 8 job offers within 4 days if they wanted. They don't want that. They want to find the path of least resistance to the next paycheck for someone they feel like is going to be a decent employer. So when you're looking at your process, know that time and delay is a negative for you, not a negative for them. Someone else is calling them, someone else is setting up that interview. So next slide. So that 48 hours actually is sped up, and in the fourth quarter is about 60. And we looked at it went to 48. But one of the other things we found when we did a huge data set at the end of last year, we looked at almost 20,000 interview schedules across our platform, and we found that there is actually no best time or best day to book an interview. Everybody's schedule is different. And so Monday mornings, most people don't like to do Monday mornings. Most people don't like to do late Friday afternoon, but we've really found that, people schedule and show up all times during the day. But one of the things we did found is, 9 out of 10 companies that were hiring 20 plus people per month consistently during the fourth quarter were offering interviews every single day and pushing for same day interviews. So being available to move that person into a paid position quickly is what they're looking for and what you should try to accomplish. Go ahead, next slide. And so also with that, I just wanted to briefly touch on your interview strategy, right? Because speed to interview is dictated by the type of interview that you're also do. And so there's a fun chart here. I'm not going to walk you all the way through it, but phone call and Zoom or FaceTime, as we've gotten accustomed to over the past 2 years, or virtual interviews, they're very fast for the most part. They can be done almost instantaneously. The problem is like the commitment level on the candidate isn't as high, and there's a lot more work that you're just passing down the funnel to your onboarding and training teams, right? Because at that point, your onboarding and training become part of your interview process, or it has to be. Because you can't get enough from a candidate over the phone or through Zoom. And so phone and Zoom are great, especially if you have rural territories or territories where it's difficult to travel, across town to get to your office. And they're tools that your recruiter should use when necessary, when they have a great candidate on the phone and that candidate can't make it to the office until Friday. We'll just pivot to a Zoom or a FaceTime call, get it done, get it locked up, close the deal. In person, we've seen have the highest conversion rate from step to step. Now it has just a little lower attrition up front in terms of show rates and making people committing to it. But when you have that face-to-face interview, you can lock up that candidate much stronger. You can walk them around the office, introduce them to people, make them feel a part of the team, give them a coffee. You can get all their paperwork done in one sitting. We've even seen offices, send them out to lunch, bring them back that afternoon and do onboarding and training. So when you have that captive audience, you can move them further down the funnel, which puts them to work faster, which is the ultimate goal. So I guess the point here is there's no wrong strategy. We have a top 3 company solely doing each one of these types of interviews. But it doesn't mean that you can't implement a strategy with any one of these and not be successful, but you just have to do it correctly. Next slide. So kind of summing this up, kind of the fourth thing is giving your recruiter the tools and the training and the attention they need to be successful. Remember, that recruiter is going to be closing every time they hire someone. That's someone that's going to make you $6,500 a month. That product you're selling for $55 to $6,500 a month. And so they need the tools in order to be successful. And they also have the most difficult job. Remember, they're competing against 8 other people to close a deal in the next 48 hours, right? And so you need to give them those tools to do outreach in bulk and mass with speed. You need to give them the ability to schedule or have candidates self-schedule so they can spend more time having valuable conversations and less time doing cold calls. Cold calls will burn you out. If you're ever in sales, you know that cold calls is the worst part of sales. Anybody who says they love cold calls is crazy or lying, because that is the hardest part of sales to get up for. And then you have to assume, one of the things you have to teach your recruiters is that you have to assume that as soon as they hang up the phone with them, as soon as they leave your office, they do have another interview scheduled. Your competition is going to be calling that candidate. And so you can't be afraid to ask the hard questions, like, how does this offer sound? Do you have any other interviews lined up, right? I come from a staffing background in my early days, and we had to ask all those hard questions at the end of a conversation, right? And making sure that they, you know, like, is my offer the best offer? You know, hey, I understand you're going to interview with multiple people. Just promise me you're going to give me a shot, right? And using different close tactics to get that person locked down in just a second and third layer of committal. And lastly, that training and those tools are incredibly important, because it's not only do you make more money, but now you have a higher quality of employment when you have speed and convenience and ease injected into that pipeline. What I mean by that is, if you're always the second interview, you're getting a majority of the time someone else's rejected candidate. So you're hiring now a candidate that wasn't made a job offer at a competitor's location, potentially, right? And so when you start adding those people into the mix, your 10s, your 8s start to look like 10s, and your 6s start to look like 8s, because you don't see as many 10s anymore. And so you want to make sure that you're giving your team the best candidates to talk to at all times. And the only way to do that is to be the first interview with as many candidates as possible. All right, last slide here. We're very big on mission versus goals. Goals is a destination. Mission is a lifelong pursuit of something. And so at Pre-Intent, it's our mission to help our clients become an unforgettable, impossible to ignore employer. And what that means is, no matter whether they join you or not, they are not going to forget you, right? Once they apply to your company, they're going to remember your company for as long as they are in home care. And so we try to achieve that goal. And I think if you're always on that road of becoming unforgettable and impossible to ignore, you're going to have a lot of success. So just last slide. If you're ever interested in having a conversation about recruitment, even if you don't want to buy our services, we're happy just to talk to you. We do a lot of sharing on best practices on job boards and ATSs and just recruiting in general. Feel free to reach out to me at any time. Otherwise, I want to pass it back to Jeff. Hopefully you found this valuable, and he's gonna carry on the meeting here.
Awesome, Chris. Thank you so much. I don't know about the rest of you, but I took a full page of notes. That is a case in point of how HCAOA connects us with best practice, with best vendors. That was phenomenal. Thank you so much, Chris. And we've got yet another one here. Rebecca Molesworth is from Trella Health, and she comes with over 20 years of experience working in healthcare information technology, especially around data, has a ton of passion around utilizing data intelligence to help organizations get better patient outcomes, to help organizations navigate the healthcare continuum, and really believes in unifying all the stakeholders in that overall ecosystem. And so it is exciting to be able to have her and have her share with us a little bit about Trella Health and what they have to offer. Welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. I'm really excited to be here. As Jeff said, I'm very passionate about connecting the dots in data. And what I want to talk about today a little bit, with the minutes we have, I'm calling this a data snack. It's not quite a full meal, it's going to be a snack on how home care agencies can start to use data to drive their strategy and their business. So if we flip to the next slide, I'll tell you just a little bit about Trella Health, who we are and what we do, so you have some context for the conversation. And then what I'm going to do is show you some data and talk about what we see and see if that resonates for you and your business. So Trella Health has been in the market about 6 years now. We are a market leader in the post-acute care space. We work with both post-acute care providers as well as the supplier side. As you can see, we have a lot of the largest home health, hospice, and SNF agencies as customers in our world. And what they use us for is to take the data that we provide, turn into insights, and use that to help them drive their business forward and ultimately to get more referrals. At the end of the day, these providers are looking to increase the volume of referrals coming in their door and to maximize their revenue while doing what they do best. We help them differentiate themselves in the market. We help them see their competitors' capabilities and lack thereof, and we help them connect to the referral sources with salient pieces of information, not donuts, but data, to come in and have a conversation about why their agency is the agency that they should be working with. We do that through a couple of different modalities. We have our data solutions, which are really a data diving tool that allows you to dig in the CMS data yourself and see what's going on in the market. We also do that through performance execution support for the sales side of the agency. And so getting data in the hands of the reps and having the reps being able to use a sales productivity tool to manage their time out in the field to make sure that they're calling on the right referrals and they're documenting what they're doing so that you can, as a business, capture those referral sources, keep them close to home, and be able to make those sales folks as productive as they possibly can. So that's what we do. And like I said today, we can go to the next slide. I want to talk to you a little bit about data. I started with stuff that anybody can have access to. So this is 2021 census data. And my point on this slide is really that there's data out there that can help you understand your business and how your business relates to the market. What you're looking at is all of on the left-hand side, all of the population that is over 65 in the year of 2021 and where they're located. And so the dark green is showing you the concentrations of the 65 plus population in the United States. The darkest pink is your lowest concentration. So it goes from dark pink being the lowest to dark green being the most dense population. So this is what we know. These are 60 million folks in Medicare program today. A great source for personal care referrals. If you look on the right-hand side, this is the same map, but this is looking at the 50 to 64 population. So what this is telling us is not only do you have folks in concentrations on the left-hand side today, those 60 million, we know we're growing to 80 million-ish over the next 8 years. This is where those folks are going to be tomorrow. So these are your 50 to 64-year-olds today that are going to grow into Medicare and be those patients for you for the future. And so this is common knowledge that the Medicare program is growing, but interesting to look at it, and this is by county, to see where you are and where your services are and where the concentrations of the people are going to be in the years to come. And if you're looking to expand into new counties, is the county adjacent to you? I'll pick on Jeff because he's from the West Coast. There's some good solid, it's probably Portland, it's probably Seattle, right? And then there's this little pocket that might be, is that Corvallis? I'm not sure if we're in Washington or Oregon, but there's somebody over there. But maybe there's some counties right next door that maybe not as lucrative in terms of population size. And if you're in the area, you probably have some sense of why that is. But it's validating to know that with basic population data, you can start to understand the area around you and where your patients are going to be. So let's go to the next slide. So now we're going to dig just a little bit deeper, and we're going to talk about looking at some of those differentiators. So what Jeff was saying, pick what you do really well. One of the things that a lot of our home health customers do is they know what chronic conditions they manage the best. They know what patients they do a lot of work for. I'm not sure if the same translates directly to personal care, but I would say that CMS patients, CMS beneficiaries who have chronic conditions are going to be great candidates for your personal care programs. They're dealing with something that is going to last with them for the rest of their lives. They tend to multiply, not reduce. And where those dark green spots are in the country, that's where you're seeing the highest populations of distribution for COPD, CHF, and diabetes. We just picked those three just as a sample. But using the fee-for-service data now, this is 100% of the Medicare fee-for-service claims for the year of 2021. We can tell you where your population density is going to be for chronic conditions. And you'll see likely again that these are concentrated in city areas where there's more population. But again, county by county, as you're looking at where are your patients coming from in the future and how you're growing, having a reference point of, hey, wow, I grew up in Michigan, so we can pick on Michigan. And I recognize those counties and it makes sense. But I also know the northern ones, the counties that are north of Detroit that are kind of getting toward the thumb. Those are not counties that I would necessarily have thought of when I think of the population density of like the Detroit area. And so you start to know your counties, you can start to see things that you may not have seen before in the data. So this is an example of the kind of data that we're pulling from the CMS claims data. And while it has no personal care claims in it, there's a lot of information about your patients, about the places they're getting their care, and what kind of care they need. We can go to the next slide. So we've been looking at fee for service. We looked at census data. We know there's a bit of a data desert for competitive differentiation in the personal care market. And part of that is we use the billing data and we can see home health and we can see hospice and we can see SNF. We can't see personal care in the fee for service data because it's not being supported by Medicare fee for service programming, which I'm sure you are all very painfully aware. However, what we are seeing in the data is adding some value. There's more data out there though, and there's more data coming online. And this is where I started to get excited. And the reason I came to HCAOA in the first place was because I wanted to talk to Vicki about personal care data that I'm finding in the Medicare Advantage data. So because of the Chronic Cares Act of it was 2017, 2019, or memory serving, but the Chronic Cares Act allowed Medicare Advantage to provide personal care as a benefit. And it's not ubiquitous yet. It's not every plan. Some of the plans are starting to provide that service. And so we're going to look at that data in a minute, just some examples of it, because I wanted to share with you guys that personal care not having data is not always going to be true. And I know that there are agencies now that are starting to try to capture internal data about their practices of care and how they're, what they're doing on site with the patients in the home setting. And that tells you a lot about the patients you're caring for. One of the things I'm really interested in is how do we start to use broader data sets to figure out what about the patients that you're not taking care of right now? And what about the rest of the market? And what are they doing? And how are they competing against you? And are they winning? Do they have more market share than you do? It's really hard to figure that out unless you have a data source. And I'm thinking this Medicare Advantage data might be the beginning of trying to understand that a little bit better. So let's go on to the next slide. And I'm going to show you a little bit of this Medicare Advantage data. First, we know Medicare Advantage is growing, right? By 2025, we think over 50% of the population will be in a Medicare Advantage program. The Chronic Cares Act allows Medicare Advantage plans to provide personal care as a benefit, as well as adult daycare. And so there's a market growing there, and more data will start coming into the Medicare Advantage claims, which gives you the ability, whether you take Medicare Advantage or not. I know I hear they just pay terribly. What I've seen in the data of billed claims, it looks like somewhere between $10 and $16 an hour, depending on where you are, was what I was seeing in the data. It's pretty dirty data though, so I don't know how accurate that is, but I know the pay is not great. And so I think there's some advocacy that is being determined right now by the minds on this call to figure out how to help that situation. But regardless of the payment, being able to look at what agencies are participating in what states, where are they competing, who's taking the benefit, who's got the benefit in the plan, so which MA plans, very valuable. So let's go to the next slide and I'll show you the cool data that we're finding. And I get a little geeked out about this, so forgive me if I'm being a little bit of a data nerd. We took the state of New York because we know that there are several benefit plans that have the personal care benefits within them in the New York State area. This is the list by the number of claims that they're driving. And I'll explain how this, so the facility name, those are the home care agencies on the left here. The city, not surprising, a lot in and around the New York City, that tri-state area. The number of patients, the home care patients that they're seeing is in that next column. We haven't sorted it by the number of patients. We actually sorted it by the number of claims. And so what you're seeing is that this top Premier Home Health Care Services in New York, they filed 514,000 plus claims in the year of 2021. for personal care. And if we break that down a little bit further, you can see these are two different types of claims. There's the T1019 and the T1020. Those are the two different CPT codes that Medicare Advantage uses for billing personal care. And so you can see that this Premier Home Healthcare Services billed a lot of the 1019 claims, which is a 15-minute increment of personal care time. So they billed 496,000 plus increments of 15 minutes with these 3,675 patients over a period of a year. The second line of claims, the 1020 claims, those are 8-hour increments. So one claim is 8 hours of personal care, which usually indicates that they're in an adult daycare program, or that they're institutionalized and they're getting personal care within that institution. So for an independent agency, the T1019 claims are the ones that are the most interesting. And you can see in this list, if you're in the New York State area, you probably will recognize some of these folks. They're out there providing services to Medicare Advantage beneficiaries. And you can see we have the dollars billed, but it's very dirty, so I didn't include it in this, but you can also look at the type of care that they're providing in terms of the type of patients they're getting the care. So what they're also, what their healthcare needs are in general, knowing that this is not clinical care that is being provided, but knowing that they predominantly are working with lots of multi-chronic condition patients who have had been at certain home health agencies or have been coming from certain SNFs may be helpful for you guys as you think about your competitive market. And if we go on to the next slide, this is my last slide for today. This is the most active home care payers. So these are the MA plans themselves. So Health First has a huge, and I went on the website just to see their whole, they've got a whole thing about how they've offered personal care as a benefit in their program with a $0 premium, and you get home care for a certain amount. And they use it as a big selling point. And you can see that they've got, 2 million claims, 2.6 million claims that they ran through 2021 into Medicare through Health First. Next came Elder Plan, Fidelis, and then others, as you can see here. But knowing who else is out there who's accepting personal care benefits and who's adding them to their plans, whether or not you decide you want to partner with an MA plan to provide personal care services, is, of course, up to you, but even just understanding the landscape in which all this business is happening and starting to understand the market. And you'll see that the ones that have the highest claims are likely the ones that have lots of better return on investment, right? So as you're looking at, which plans do you want to play with, looking at ones that have the highest claimants either means they've got a sweet deal and they're getting paid better, or they're a dominant player in the market and they feel like they need to work with them because of volume. And so depending on what market you're looking at, it could be different reasons for seeing that high volume of claims, but they leave you hints about how your market's performing and how you can start to position yourself in the market to be a better competitor. I will say that watching the post-acute providers on the home health, SNF, and hospice side, they know they have to use data. They're already using data to compete against each other. In fact, they use a lot of Trella data to compete against each other. And the reason that has become such a big, it's now table stakes. You can't walk into a doctor's office with a bag of donuts and expect the same reception as if you walk in and said, "Hi, Mrs. Jones was in our facility. She's admitted. She's doing great. And we also have Mrs. Smith, who you referred to us a week ago, and she's already getting home therapies," or whatever it is. They're using that data very clearly. And I think the future for personal care is definitely going towards data. As the data comes online, those agencies that know how to use the data that's available and to be smart with it are going to have heads and tails advantages over those that do not. We saw it happen in health, hospice, and now SNF. I predict, my prediction is we will see that happen here. So I just wanted to give you a taste of some of the data that's there today that you guys can start to tap into, and to hopefully whet your appetite for finding more data, because I do believe in it strongly. And I think that this is how you create a successful sales organization that drives your growth for your business.
That was awesome, Rebecca. That I love that. And I personally believe that right there is the future of where home care is going to be headed. It is going to be in the data that we articulate our value proposition to the marketplace, that they begin to understand the outcomes that are coming out of being the home care industry, and that we really end up becoming a huge driver in the healthcare continuum. So I think that was fantastic. Yeah, I'm going to turn it over now to Jennifer Batista. She is our COO with the Home Care Association of America and responsible for helping to generate membership and so forth. And she has a special offer. It's one of those, but wait, there's more moments.
I know, I feel like I should have a game show set behind me or something, but before, I do, as promised, we do have a really exclusive offer for everyone who was able to join us today. But I do want to thank Rebecca and Chris for supporting HCAOA and all of our members as vendors. They are both associate members of our association, which are vendors who provide services and products and things that our members use. And they're extremely supportive. And as you can tell, they have a lot of knowledge and expertise, and we call on them quite frequently. And they too also have been kind enough to extend a special offer for those of you who are joining us today. And of course, thank you to Jeff for leading this discussion. As we're at the ground at HCAOA every day, we're constantly trying to brainstorm and think of new things that can benefit our members. So it's so wonderful to hear you say that, some of the success that you've seen has been due to relationships that you've made through HCAOA or programs you've attended. I mean, that's exactly what we're hoping for. And we hope that everyone on the call today will join us as well. So the moment you've been waiting for, drum roll. So for the next 48 hours, so basically through Thursday at midnight, so it's a little more than 48 hours, anyone who participated in this call today, we are offering you a special 15% discount off the regular membership dues for HCAOA. So it's typically $845 for a year, which is a number Jeff referenced earlier in some of his calculations. But if you join now before the end of the day, before midnight on Thursday, you can join for $718.25, and that includes your membership through the end of the year. Just kind of a breakdown, you are a member of the National Home Care Association of America. We also are very active at the state level with state chapters. We have state lobbyists, as Vicki mentioned, in about 10 of our states. So you're automatically included in the state membership. And you also have access to all of the member benefits, discounts, resources. Jeff mentioned earlier, when we come at things as a group, we have a little more leverage. So we're able to negotiate discounts on behalf of members. And, we have everything. There's dozens and dozens of benefits that members can take advantage of. Everything from, home healthcare news. You can get a 20% discount on your subscription to their HHCN Plus content. Computers. Everyone has to buy computers and tablets for all of our caregivers. We have a special negotiated partnership with Dell, where HCAOA members get a nice discount on technology through Dell. All three of the accrediting bodies for home care are members of HCAOA and offer discounts for agencies who are interested in accreditation, either for personal reasons or because that is becoming kind of a condition or an option for licensure in some states. So again, it's kind of looking ahead down the road at some benefits that are available to you. And even things like ADP, for payroll, which many people already use, you can get an additional discount just by being a member of HCAOA. So I encourage you to join us today for all of those benefits, as well as Rebecca and the folks at Trella are waiving the $2,500 setup fee for their MarketScape solution, which is some of the data that Rebecca was talking about that's focused just on the post-acute market. And then Chris and the team at Pre-Intent are offering a 25% discount for the first 3 months to use their recruiting software, which, those 4 steps that Chris walked us through, this kind of gets you right into that. And we know at HCAOA, we hear from members all the time that, of course, recruiting caregivers is one of the biggest challenges. So here are things that you can join HCAOA today. You can take advantage of all of our full menu of benefits, but also these 2 exclusive benefits for those of you who joined us today for our discussion. So On the screen now is a QR code. You can hold your phone up to that, the camera, and it'll take you to a special link to a unique personal membership application form that will reflect that discounted price. We'll also follow up with everyone with an email with that link as well. But again, I think that, we're stronger together. We have more power, we have more voice. And so we hope that, those of you who joined us today will consider joining our association and getting involved and lending your voice. So Jeff, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, very well said, Jennifer. I think that today was a good example of a sample of what kind of content, connection, networking, best practices, education, opportunities, future focus that we offer as an association. So, if Gina or Karen or Lena or Melissa, Shauna, Terry, Victoria, or whomever else, all the rest of you, now is a great opportunity to be able to consider this, because even if you implemented what you learned today, you'd have an ROI off of the membership. And that's the way I like to think about my investments as a business owner, is in terms of ROI. And there's no question in my mind that this is the best ROI of any investment I made from the very first day that I joined the industry through to today. Big believer.
Great. Thank you so much again, Jeff, for your leadership and for all of your insight today. Rebecca and Chris, thank you again for just being such a great partner to HCAOA. Vicki, our CEO, any closing words before we wrap up?
Thank you all. I encourage, if anyone has any questions, our emails are on our website, hcaoa.org. I'd love to talk with you. Phone numbers are great too, but we really hope you will consider joining us. We need you, and I think we can help you as well. Thank you all. Have a good day, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.